This is something by Howard Zinn, written back in 2006 about the 4th of July. On this July 4th, we should do well to renounce nationalism and all its symbols, its flags, its pledges of allegiance, its anthems, its insistence in song that God must single out America to be blessed. Is not nationalism, that devotion to a flag, an anthem, a boundary so fierce it engenders mass murder, one of the great evils of our time, along with racism, along with religious hatred? These ways of thinking, cultivated, nurtured, indoctrinated from childhood on, have been useful to those in power and deadly for those out of power. National spirit can be benign in a country that is small and lacking both in military power and hunger for expansion. Switzerland, Norway, Costa Rica, and many more. But in a nation like ours, huge, possessing thousands of weapons of mass destruction that might have been harmless, pride becomes an arrogant nationalism, dangerous to others and to ourselves. Our citizenry has been brought up to see our nation as different from others, an exception in the world, uniquely moral, expanding into other lands in order to bring civilization, liberty, and democracy. That self-deception started early, when the first English settlers moved into Indian land in Massachusetts Bay and were resisted. The violence escalated into war with the Pequot Indians. The killing of Indians was seen as approved by God, the taking of land as commanded by the Bible. The Puritans cited one of the Psalms which says, "Ask of me, and I shall give thee, the heathen for thine inheritance, and the utmost parts of the earth for thy possession." When the English set fire to a Pequot village and massacred men, women, and children, the Puritan theologian Cotton Mather said, "It was supposed that no less than 600 Pequot souls were brought down to hell that day." On the eve of the Mexican War, an American journalist declared it our manifest destiny to overspread the continent allotted by Providence. After the invasion of Mexico began, the New York Herald announced, "We believe it is a part of our destiny to civilize in that beautiful land." It was always supposedly for benign purposes that our country went to war. We invaded Cuba in 1898 to liberate the Cubans, and we went to war in the Philippines shortly after, as President McKinley put it, to civilize and Christianize the Filipino people. As our armies were committing massacres in the Philippines, at least 600,000 Filipinos died in a few years of conflict. Elihu Root, our Secretary of War, was saying, "The American soldier is different from all other soldiers of all other countries since the war began. He is the advance guard of liberty and justice, of law and order, and of peace and of happiness." We see in Iraq that our soldiers are not different. They have, perhaps against their better nature, killed thousands of Iraq civilians, and some soldiers have shown themselves capable of brutality and torture. Yet they are victims, too, of our government's lies. How many times have we heard President Bush tell the troops that if they die, if they return without arms or legs or blinded, it is for liberty, for democracy? One of the effects of nationalist thinking is a loss of sense of proportion. The killing of 2,300 people at Pearl Harbor becomes the justification for killing 240,000 in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The killing of 3,000 people on September 11th becomes the justification for killing tens of thousands of people in Afghanistan and Iraq. And nationalism is given a special virulence when it is said to be blessed by Providence. Today, we have a president invading two countries in 4 years who announced on the campaign trail in 2004 that God speaks through him. We need to refute the idea that our nation is different from, morally superior to, the other imperial powers of the world history. We need to assert our allegiance to the human race and not to any one nation. That's Howard Zinn back in 2006 on the 4th of July. Speaking on the 4th of July, regarding the 4th of July.
This also is part of our culture, I think, and that is a misguided notion of what patriotism is. I think we grow up in this country very often with the idea, which is inculcated from the beginning. You pledge allegiance to the flag and sing the Star-Spangled Banner and exalt military heroism. Grow up with the idea that to be patriotic means to support whatever the government does. And if you oppose the government, if you criticize the government, you're being unpatriotic. To think that way is a violation of basic democratic principles. The Declaration of Independence establishes the democratic principle. Governments are artificial creations. Governments are set up by the people to ensure certain rights: equality, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. When governments become destructive of those rights, that's what the Declaration of Independence says, it is the right of people to alter or abolish the government. If it's the right of people to alter or abolish the government, then certainly the right of people to criticize the government. The government and the people. You know, I see on television young fellows going off to war, as I did way back. And I see the television interviewer asks, well, young man, how do you feel about going off to Iraq? Well, I feel that I owe something to my country. It's not your country that you're fighting for when you go to war. It's your government. It's Halliburton. It's the great corporations. It's the people who benefit from war. It's the politicians. It's the industrialists. It's not the country.